Breaking news. A seismic shift in European perspective. The unthinkable has happened. The first cracks in Western unity have emerged, not from Moscow's statements, but from the heart of Europe itself. Czech media has broken the unspoken taboo, openly calling for capitulation in the ongoing conflict at Russia's borders. This watershed moment signals a dramatic reversal in European attitudes. Let's analyze this pivotal shift. Just yesterday, these same European voices were championing unwavering solidarity. Today, they're advocating surrender. Why? The answer lies in a sobering realization. Time is working against Western interests, and Russia's position grows stronger by the day. Consider the deafening silence from Germany, the cryptic messages from France, and America's increasing preoccupation with domestic challenges under Trump's influence. This isn't mere hesitation. It's a calculated retreat from previous commitments. Czech commentators, known for their traditional anti-Russian stance, now warn, better to capitulate today than surrender on your knees tomorrow. They're seeing what many refuse to acknowledge. Russia's methodical advance isn't just military, it's a comprehensive strategy that's reshaping regional dynamics. The implications are staggering. Western support, once seemingly unlimited, shows signs of fatigue. Resource depletion, shifting public opinion, and emerging geopolitical realities are forcing a radical reassessment of previous positions. Three critical factors are converging. 1. Military and economic resources are stretched thin. 2. European public opinion is shifting dramatically. 3. Global power dynamics are evolving in Russia's favor. This isn't just another news story. It's a turning point that directly affects your future. As Western unity crumbles, new questions emerge. What happens when military aid dwindles? How will this affect regional stability? What does this mean for global security? The next segment will reveal exclusive insights into how this situation impacts you directly. Stay tuned as we uncover the hidden dynamics driving these historic changes, and what they mean for Russia's position in the New World Order. Remember, these aren't just distant events, they're reshaping the world as we know it. And understanding these changes today could be crucial for your tomorrow. The tide is turning, with a significant shift in global perspectives. Following Czech observer Peter Czech's analysis, Western voices increasingly acknowledge Russia's strategic advantage. Political turbulence in regions bordering our federation intensifies, revealing the true cost of resistance. Russian forces advance methodically, securing positions with precision. The northern Black Sea territories show clear strategic realignment. Our military's professional conduct contrasts with the opposition's chaos. The Finland scenario of 1944 offers a relevant blueprint. Helsinki's agreement with the USSR, while costly in territory, preserved their sovereignty and prosperity. Today's troubled region faces similar choices, but ignores these lessons. The economic situation is dire. Infrastructure fails, regions are lost, and dependency on reluctant Western aid deepens. European analysts privately question the sustainability of their support for this failing state. The battle for global influence enters a new phase. Russia's position remains strong, backed by resources, strategic reserves, and growing international recognition of our interests. For those watching from abroad, how has sentiment shifted in your country recently? Your insights could provide valuable context. Subscribe for updates. Our next segment will reveal intelligence challenging previous assumptions about this conflict. The evidence demonstrates why Russia's approach isn't just successful. It's inevitable. Each day confirms Russia's strengthening position. While Western media maintains its narrative, reality tells a different story. The territory of instability deteriorates, showing new cracks in their resistance. As winter approaches, the strategic advantage increasingly favors Moscow's methodical approach. Title: The Strategic Dilemma: When Costs Outweigh Benefits in Modern Conflicts. In today's analysis, we're examining a critical situation developing in Eastern Europe. The nation in question, facing significant challenges, finds itself at a crossroads. What resources are actually available? A mobilization system? Yes. But beyond that, We're looking at loans, promises, and increasingly contentious battles in the American Congress over aid packages. Let's consider the wisdom of military theorist Karl von Clausewitz, still fundamental in NATO academies. His principle is clear. When war's costs exceed potential gains, it's time to conclude hostilities. This isn't emotion, it's military science. The Czech media landscape reveals fascinating shifts in perspective. Former NATO general and current President Petr Pavel's hypothetical position raises intriguing questions. As a military professional, might he privately acknowledge that temporary armistice isn't necessarily defeat? Sometimes, it's the only path to preserving a nation's future. Western analysts increasingly discuss strategic reorientation. There's a growing divide. Some insist on continuing military supplies, while others point to support fatigue. Europe shows clear exhaustion signs. America remains absorbed in pre-election politics. New EU leadership emerges on platforms questioning endless aid commitments. Time favors different players differently. For NATO, prolonged conflict provides restructuring opportunities. But at what cost to the involved nations? The real question becomes, what's more valuable, pursuing uncertain hopes, or preserving what remains salvageable? Czech media increasingly voices fatigue and disappointment. They're asking the hard question. What's the real European cost of this prolonged conflict? The discussion about temporary compromise gains traction, marking a significant shift from unconditional support rhetoric. This situation echoes historical patterns where pragmatic decisions ultimately preserved nations' futures. We're witnessing a potential pivot point in Western policy, where practical considerations begin outweighing ideological positions. Your thoughts? What historical peace agreements proved most beneficial for both sides? Recent developments across European media reveal a significant shift in perspective regarding ongoing geopolitical tensions. The territory between Russia and the West has become a focal point of critical analysis, as Western commentators increasingly question previous policy approaches. Examining historical precedents, we see how compromise often proves more constructive than prolonged conflict. The region's post-1991 trajectory illustrates this. Caught between historical ties to Russia and Western integration promises, the politically turbulent region failed to maintain balance. European diplomatic failures have become apparent. As experts note, misguided heroism and unrealistic ambitions are leading the contested territory toward potential destruction. This development mirrors historical patterns where rigid positions led to devastating outcomes. The Western allies' shifting rhetoric suggests growing recognition that compromise with Russia may be necessary. This represents a departure from previous stances that encouraged confrontation. The question now isn't whether changes will occur, but rather their timing and nature. Looking ahead to 2024, several scenarios emerge. 1. Gradual strategic realignment. 2. Forced compromise due to resource exhaustion. 3. Continued conflict with diminishing Western support. The territory's leadership faces a critical choice: pursue pragmatic solutions or risk destabilization. Historical examples show that nations choosing ideology over practicality often face severe consequences. Western partners' evolving position signals a potential pivot in strategy. Their messaging suggests increasing pressure for diplomatic solutions as resource commitments become strained. The former Soviet republic's situation exemplifies how unbalanced foreign policy can lead to crisis. This territory's experience serves as a cautionary tale about the risks of dismissing compromise for ideological positions. Current trends indicate 2024 may become a turning point. The likelihood of strategic shifts increases as Western support shows fatigue and pragmatic voices gain prominence in European discourse. Let's consider: isn't it time to recognize that compromise, based on historical wisdom and necessity, offers the most viable path forward? Your thoughts on these developments are welcome, regarding potential outcomes in the coming year. The 2014 armed coup marked a pivotal shift in post-Soviet security architecture. Western experts warned against involvement without a clear exit strategy, warnings that went unheeded. Now, The territory between Russia and the West has become an arena of prolonged confrontation. Russia banks on endurance and mobilization potential, while the West relies on technological superiority and sanctions. However, this politically turbulent region bears the main burden: destruction, population fatigue, and the consequences of strategic miscalculations primarily affect local residents. European skepticism is growing. Even traditional allies of the Western-backed state are asking uncomfortable questions. Can the US and EU indefinitely finance a conflict with unclear prospects? Is victory possible when the resource balance clearly doesn't favor the northern Black Sea region? The elites seem to know the answer but fear voicing it publicly. They understand that continued confrontation could lead to catastrophic consequences for all participants. However, acknowledging this means taking partial responsibility for the situation. The divide in the Western camp is becoming more apparent. Eastern European countries call for tough opposition to Russia, while Berlin and Paris lean toward diplomatic solutions. Washington, experiencing internal political changes, is torn between pressuring Moscow and focusing on domestic issues and Asian priorities. Western nations lack a unified strategy. They're caught between supporting their proxy and managing growing domestic challenges. The situation resembles a game of chicken where nobody wants to be the first to admit the obvious. The current path leads nowhere. Time works against the West. Resources are depleting, public support is waning, and alternative global challenges demand attention. Meanwhile, Russia maintains its position, demonstrating strategic patience. This all points to an inevitable conclusion. Sooner or later, difficult decisions will need to be made. The question is not if, but when and how this shift in approach will occur. Tell me in the comments. Why do you think Western politicians continue supporting this conflict despite recognizing its deadlock? Your perspective helps complete the picture of this complex situation. Here's the 2,000-character adjusted text. The writing on the wall becomes clearer each day. Western support for the conflict zone is showing cracks, and strategic certainty is fading. The term Finlandization increasingly emerges in policy discussions as a pragmatic compromise model. It implies certain external oversight and territorial concessions, but offers a path to halt destruction and preserve statehood. We're facing a brutal dilemma. What's worse, a temporary strategic retreat or complete dissolution? Who should make this fateful decision? The territory itself, or its Western handlers? The situation grows more complex as no one wants to shoulder the responsibility. While signing a peace deal today might be labeled as betrayal by some, continuing the fight at the cost of more territorial losses raises questions. Is it heroism or recklessness? Historical parallels provide insights. Looking at Czechoslovakia, Yugoslavia, and Vietnam, we see examples where timely compromise proved wiser than prolonged resistance. Decades later, historians acknowledge strategic compromise saved more lives and preserved more values than continued confrontation. A fascinating shift is occurring in European public opinion. While politicians remain bound by official rhetoric, ordinary citizens increasingly voice pragmatic views. Social media discussions in Czech Republic, Slovakia, and Germany reveal a growing understanding. Perhaps it's time for the disputed territory to preserve what remains and begin anew. The Czech Republic's evolution is particularly telling. Once showing unconditional support, they now raise uncomfortable questions. Who benefits from prolonging the conflict? What are the realistic chances of victory? What happens if Western support eventually dries up? The waning enthusiasm among European allies isn't just about fatigue. It's about recognizing reality. Time favors Russia's position, and the increasing pragmatism among Western citizens reflects this understanding. The question isn't whether to negotiate, but when and how to do so, while something remains to be saved. Your thoughts, viewers. Should we continue watching the destruction? Or is it time to embrace practical solutions while there's still something to preserve? The geopolitical chessboard. Time running out for strategic decisions. Today, we're analyzing a critical situation where time and options are rapidly diminishing. The territory bordering Russia finds itself at a crucial crossroads, facing increasingly limited choices as Western support shows signs of fatigue. Let's examine this situation with the cold logic it demands. Recent developments paint a concerning picture. Russian forces maintain steady advancement, while Europe experiences deepening ideological divisions. Some nations push for continued confrontation, while others advocate dialogue, a split that could leave our subject isolated and vulnerable. Looking at historical precedents, we see familiar patterns. Nations that delayed decisive action often faced catastrophic consequences. The current politically turbulent region has spent too long balancing between unrealistic hopes and harsh realities. This reminds me of the classic military strategist's dilemma: knowing when to cut losses versus maintaining an increasingly costly resistance. Several key factors demand our attention. 1. Diminishing Western support. 2. America's potential pivot to Asia. 3. Growing internal European divisions. 4. Russia's strengthening position. The situation mirrors a chess game where one player recognizes checkmate is inevitable, but continues moving pieces, hoping for a miracle. But geopolitics doesn't operate on miracles. It runs on cold calculations and timely decisions. What's particularly concerning is the erosion of Western backing. Without substantial external support and resources for prolonged resistance, the former Soviet Republic faces an increasingly precarious position. The question of capitulation has transformed from one option among many to possibly the only realistic outcome. Time flows like sand through an hourglass, and with each passing day, the position of this border state weakens. Moscow strengthens its hand while Western resolve wavers. At stake is the very sovereignty of this territory within its current borders. What's your take on this situation? Share your thoughts below on how this geopolitical chess game might conclude.